Hi there, I'm Dr. Funke Afolabi Brown. I'm the founder of Restful Sleep MD, and I help busy women, high performing women sleep better as well as their children. So if you are the mom of a newborn, if you are a pregnant mom, or if you know someone who is either the mom of a newborn or is, pregnant and is going to be having a baby soon, I want you to really listen in because this is specifically for you. So the reason why this video came about was that a couple of weeks ago, I was privileged to be part of a roundtable with some incredible experts where we talked about the fourth trimester. And so in case you don't know, the fourth trimester is that essentially that period after you've had your baby where you're still sort of in that newborn period. And so usually this is a very challenging time. It's a big change. It's exciting, but it can be overwhelming. And so we had this roundtable where we talked about all things care of the newborn, care for the mom of the newborn. It was incredible. And yours truly, of course, had the privilege to speak on sleep in that newborn period. And so I just want to highlight some of the big takeaways that I talked about and then maybe add a few more because, I love to give bonuses and all that. So today we're going to be talking about how to set up healthy sleep foundation for your newborn. Okay, so again, listen in. Now, the first thing that I want you to know is you are not going to be able to sleep train your newborn or expect them to be able to fall asleep independently. They're going to need your help in that initial stage. And the reason why sleep is a skill and our babies start to learn over time. But in that first, few weeks, everybody is sort of in survival mode. And so really understanding that even though you cannot, start a bedtime routine or do things like that, essentially in that newborn phase or try to sleep train them, you can set a healthy sleep foundation. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So the first thing I want you to know is, number one, is that you need to have an ideal sleep environment. So when we want to set up our newborns for future sleep success, I want you to pay attention to the sleep environment. Now, that sleep environment could be in the same room with you where you are sort of room sharing, not co-sleeping. That's definitely not something I recommend because of the high risk of sudden infant death syndrome and things like that. So if you're room sharing, that's their room sleep environment. If they're going to sleep in their own space, in their own nursery, that's what I would refer to as the sleep environment. So there are some basics when it comes to setting up that sleep environment. And the first piece of it, I would say, is one, making sure we understand the ABCs of safe sleep. So what are the ABCs of safe sleep? It is that your newborn should be asleep alone on their backs in their crib or bassinet. So that's really important. They should be alone on their backs in their crib or bassinet. And the reason why is we want to reduce any risk of SIDS or sudden infant death syndrome. The second piece of the sleep environment that I want us to pay attention to, which will be very important because newborn sleep is sort of occurring in bursts. They have what you call this day-night confusion and they're sleeping for a while. So really to set them up, the next piece about the sleep environment is to make sure that you deal with any issues with excessive light exposure. And so really that sleep environment should be dark, okay? And the reason why is even though their brains are not yet consistently producing melatonin, which is the sleep hormone that triggers our brain to know when we're supposed to sleep, really you're starting to cue your baby to understand that when it's dark, it's time to sleep. And that helps them to sleep well because their eyes can still perceive light. So making sure that your baby's sleep environment or nursery is as dark as possible. And you may need things like blackout shades, blackout curtains. One thing I would say is sometimes even the light that peeks in through like the corridor and things like that is enough to interrupt their sleep, or through, the curtains and thirds like that. So you really want to make sure that there's no light that's coming in from anywhere and the room is as dark as possible. The third part of that sleep environment is noise. Okay, now usually I always promote having a room that's noise free, but for a newborn you have to remember for the whole 9 months, or if your baby was premature earlier, they've been in an environment, there's been noise in there, you've been moving around with them, and then your placenta actually, as it's pushing blood from the mom to the baby, makes this whoosh whoosh whooshing sound. So they're already used to that sound, and so when they come out into the world trying to figure it all out, it's always recommended. That's definitely something I personally would recommend, to have a white noise machine. A white noise machine kind of makes those sounds, but one thing I would say is make sure that white noise machine is on throughout their sleep period. Okay, so having a white noise machine is really a very delightable sound that your baby is already used to and would really look forward to when they're sleeping, and it also helps their sleep. Plus, the other piece is that it masks out other noises that could potentially disrupt their sleep, right? So if it's during the day, then you're moving around, there's stuff going on at home, you're speaking, floorboards may be creaking, all those things can wake them up. So if you have a white noise machine, what that will do is it will dampen the external noise as well as simulate the noise they're used to. Now, I recommend when you're getting a noise machine that you avoid ones that have all this like sounds of the forest and birds chirping. The reason why is that there's so many frequencies to those machines that your baby's brain actually starts to pick that out and can interrupt their sleep. Okay, enough about the noise piece. And then the fourth piece when it comes to that room environment is the temperature. Now, a lot of times we want our babies to be warm and cozy and bundled up. The issue is that they are at a risk of getting overheated. So if your room temperature is too warm, most likely your baby is going to be uncomfortable, they're going to be sweaty, and that's going to affect their ability to sleep for, decent stretches of time. The way I would recommend is, avoid overbundling them, especially when you're swaddling your baby, which is really recommended, especially during those first few weeks and months of life, because they have this startle reflex that can wake them up. So swaddle your baby, but they don't need to be overbundled. And usually I recommend that your room environment should be anywhere between 68 to 72 degrees. And the best way you can tell if your baby is too warm is you could just feel their back, if they feel sweaty, if they feel clammy, if they have their hair sticking to their to their face or whatever, that probably means that it's a bit too hot. And so that's something that you can pay attention to and make an adjustment. So that was just the sleep environment. So that's number one, the sleep environment. So you've set that up even before you're bringing in your baby, or even if you haven't, you could do that now. The second is understanding your baby's sleep patterns. Okay, and that could have been number one, but I'm just putting it out there for you. So now when it comes to your baby sleep patterns, something you have to know that is almost always consistent is that your baby sleep might not be consistent. Okay, they are sleeping again in what seems to you like short bursts, and that's because of a number of things. They're feeding very frequently, they're developing very rapidly, they need about 14 to 17 hours of sleep. So it seems like they're sleeping majority of the day and sometimes majority of the night. The issue now starts to come up where they're sleeping during the day because they have this day-night confusion. So they're sleeping more during the day, and then at night they want to party. What's up with that? So understanding those things, understanding that they may be sleeping anywhere from 2 to 3 hours or even shorter. So if your baby is taking a nap anywhere from about 30 minutes to 2 hours or 20 minutes to 2 hours, that's actually pretty normal. And at night, they may continue the same pattern. So really understanding that really helps you to understand to know what you're getting into and to help you plan ahead. And so that's taking me to what I would say is number 3. So number 2 was understanding your baby's sleep pattern. Number 3 is how do we optimize and shift that day-night confusion? And that day-night confusion comes from the place where, they're soothed by all your motion during the day. So they're calmer and they feel, really cozy, and they're sleeping during the day. And then at night, when you're sleeping, then they wake up. So that really comes and it manifests itself when they're out of your belly. And so helping them with moving that day-night confusion will take a few steps. Number 1 is teaching them again, because they are not producing melatonin, but you can start to help them recognize that during the day is, when we're awake, there's light outside, and at night is where things are calm and quiet. And so the way that you can work on this is that during the day, during feeding and things like that, you try whatever period they're awake for, even if they're awake for only 20 minutes. And that wake period, we talk about wake windows, can be anywhere from about, say, 20 minutes to 60 minutes or so. So during that wake period, try to engage them as much as possible. When you're changing their diapers, sing to them, even if the same content, they're not hungry, cue, talk to them and things like that. And even when they're feeding, you want them to be as awake as possible. You want it to be done in, bright light conditions. This is during the day, okay? If they're taking a nap, of course, it's appropriate that your room is dark and things like that. Now, when we move to nighttime feeds, you want to start to help them understand that at night, everything is quiet, right? Night is for sleep. So you're very businesslike. Avoid too much interaction. You change their diaper very efficiently. You feed them in very dim light conditions. Of course, you need to find your way to them, right? So you may need some light, but try to avoid any bright light. Try to be as calm as, avoiding too much interaction during that feed as much as possible. So this will start to cue their bodies to recognize, okay, we need to make that reversal. Within those first 2 weeks, it's definitely challenging, but this is something you can start to implement almost right away, okay? Now, number 4 is that you have to understand that their feeding patterns. During this time, listen, your newborns, can you see my finger? Your newborn's stomach is literally that small. So they're feeding extremely frequently, anywhere from, 10 to 12 feeds a day, or sometimes even more. So they do what we call cluster feeding, and that's normal because they're, again, their stomachs are very small. They're growing very rapidly during that stage, and it can sometimes be a bit overwhelming. So understanding those feeding patterns will help you then with some tips that can help with their sleep. One is that a pattern that most babies, newborns do is what you call this sort of like enough to take the edge off. So they almost like snack, especially if you're breastfeeding. They're breastfeeding frequently and things like that. But sometimes they just get a little bit to just take the edge off, to sort of fix that hunger craving, but not necessarily to fill them. And what then happens is that if they're only taking those little short bursts of feeding and falling asleep, they're taking really short naps. And what will happen is then they wake up really hungry after just a few minutes. And so you feel like you're feeding and then they're sleeping, you're feeding, you're sleeping. So you need to break that cycle. Best way to do it is making sure you try to get them to be full with every feed. And what does that look like? It's avoiding, having them fall asleep on the breast, for instance, if you're nursing, or on the bottle. So you really want to make sure that they are full. There are ways that you can tell when your baby is hungry. They may be clenching their fists. They may be a bit more tense. And then as they get fuller, they start to relax and things like that. So really making sure that they're awake. They're not dozing off within a few minutes of sucking on the breast. They're not using your breast or the bottle as a pacifier, but they're actually feeding. And this will include, again, if you expose them to bright light during the feeding, at least during the day, if you try to keep them awake as possible, if you're moving from one breast to the other, you're changing their diaper between a feeding. Sometimes it may be like exposing them, stripping them naked, okay? Like National Geographic, like, whatever, just making sure that you engage. You may need to tickle their toes, rub their face, just make sure they're as awake as possible during every feed. That will reduce those like cluster feeding, sleeping. That would help increase the time that they're spending asleep after each feed. So pay real close attention, understanding your baby's feeding patterns and making sure that they are full. Then the next piece that I would recommend is the pause. So what that is your own pause, okay? And understanding what's going on with your baby. And the reason why I say that is many times our babies make all kinds of sounds. They're grunting, they're squirming, they're snorting, they're making all kinds of interesting noises, okay? The reason why is babies go through 2 stages of sleep. One is called your active sleep, and that's what we call REM sleep, which is your sort of like rapid eye movement sleep or your dream sleep. And then the other type of sleep they go through is called a deep sleep. Okay, so those are the 2 main stages in newborns within the first about 2 to 3 months of life. That's what they go through. Now, active sleep is like super ridiculously active. They are like it's called rapid eye movement sleep as they get older, but you're seeing their eyes moving. Sometimes they're making sucking noises. Sometimes they're squirming. Sometimes they may just let out a cry. Now, the reason why I say pause is you see those signs and you just go grab your baby because you're like, oh, he's waking up. I don't want him to cry. I want to feed him. Meanwhile, they're just going through that REM sleep and they just needed a moment. So when you pause to see where is this headed, that would help you make sure you're not taking them out of a sleep cycle too quickly. And that would help reduce those like, oh, my baby is taking really short naps as much as possible. Okay, so pay attention, pause, give yourself a moment and see. Sometimes they'll make those sounds and they'll settle down again. So don't rush to pick them up because you may actually be inevitably waking them up. Okay, now the sixth is, even though again I've talked about it, you may not be able to sleep train right now, you may not have like a set routine of some sort, but I think starting to incorporate a little bit of a routine and schedule will give you some degree of control in a situation where you feel is completely out of your control. So start to watch your baby again, understanding they take a lot of naps during the day, but really starting to see, usually most babies have what we call, and even young children, we have what we call wake windows. It's not been a term that we've used too much within the context of sleep medicine. You'll hear a lot of either sleep consultants and things like that talk about it. And so those wake windows is the time between when your baby wakes up and they're put down for their next nap. And for the newborn, that's anywhere between about 30 to 60 minutes. Some people will say about 30 to 90. There's just so much information out there. So I think about 30 to 60 minutes. So trying to have them awake as much as possible within that wake window, although you, on the flip side, you want to make sure they're not overtired. So what are things that you can do? So that wake window is very short and there's not much that happens because they wake up, you may feed them, right? Change their diaper, you may, hold them, sing to them, and then they're ready. Your 30 minutes or 60 minutes is up. So trying to keep them within that time. By the time it's close to that 60-minute, you have to start to pay attention to what their sleepy cues are. Every baby has a sleepy cue or has some sleepy cues. So paying attention to that will help you to know when to put them down for a nap and to prevent them from being overtired. So that's what I mean when you start to have some structure. You're like, okay, it's about 60 minutes. My baby is starting to show signs that they're starting to feel tired, and now I'm going to put them down for their nap. So some of those sleepy cues are, some babies may start to frown. Sometimes they may just glaze over. For fairer skinned babies, they may have like redder eyebrows. You may start to see them clench and unclench their fists. As they get older, they may rub their eyes. So every baby is different. Study your baby. This is like a journey of self-discovery. Find what your baby's sleepy cues are. And once you find that, it goes very quickly from sleepy cues to overtired to angry baby who will not settle down. And if a baby is overtired, they're not going to sleep for long. So once you start to see that, oh, wow, the baby looks like they're about to, sleep, then you really do a very quick, brief, tiny routine. I encourage that. Now, this is like maybe you rock them, sing to them, and put them down. So, and then of course, put them in that environment that's dark, your white noise machine going and things like that. Paying attention to that will start to give you some structure. And then at bedtime, again, it's too early to really do much, but still having something to say, okay, now we're going to your nighttime sleep. So whatever that looks like, if it's 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. for your baby, right? So full, you would not expect them to sleep probably more than 2 or 3 hours anyway, but still having maybe changing their onesie or wiping them down or changing their diaper, singing a song to them and then putting them down. That starts to build, again, some kind of schedule and structure for you. So things are not free flowing. Now, if you're someone who likes free flowing, that's totally fine too, okay? So that's totally fine. So the very last tip that I would give you to help with building a healthy sleep foundation for your baby is taking care of yourself. Taking care of yourself as a mom. And that is where self-care comes in. So what does self-care look like for you as a new mom who has this baby and you're trying to get them to sleep well? One is leveraging resources. Find where your tribe is. Find your tribe. You may need to have discovered this even before the baby comes. Your spouse, your partner, whatever. You make sure you tell them you need help, for example, at night for the nighttime feeds, you could move the baby's bassinet to the other side of the room next to your partner so that they can deal with any awakenings. You could just feed the baby and then have your partner do the diaper change and put them back into their bassinet. You know what I mean? So really leveraging resources, have someone else come or people help you with meals, with things like that. Ask for help because people will not know if you don't, like, they can't read your mind. They may send you like, more and more diapers or more and more cute outfits till your baby is two. Meanwhile, all you need is, a meal prep plan or something. So ask for the help because it will amaze you how much people really want help. So that's one key thing in terms of self-care. Another one is get outside. Now, it's easy to say, well, this baby is just controlling my whole life because I'm living around them. But like in the morning, remember, that would also help with your mood and will help with their day-night confusion. Get out there with them in a stroller, go for a walk, enjoy the breeze, breathe, okay? The light is helpful for your mood. The light is helpful for promoting alertness for you as well as for your baby. So get out there, get some movement in, take care of yourself. Another one is realizing that a routine for yourself is very helpful. So what are 2 to 3, even in the midst of what looks like chaos, what are 2 or 3 things that you can do for yourself to promote, good sleep, even if the sleep is not for a very long period of time? So this may look like a soak in a bath. It may look like a warm shower and changing into your PJs. It may look like journaling or reading a book, something that you enjoy, that you can look forward to at the end of the day, that sort of helps you set the difference between day and night. Trust me, I know it all runs into one. I've been there, but I think this is such a big game changer. Having some kind of routine, it gives you, again, that level of some things that you can control. And finally, when it comes to you just understanding self-care and prioritizing yourself, is know that this will get better. I promise you, it will get better. Follow the recommendations I've listed there, practice them, take care of you, ask for help, and realize that this period you can thrive and it will get better. So this is a little bit longer than my usual videos, but I really wanted to get this out there to you. If you have a mom or in your world who is about to have a baby or has a baby, I would love it if you shared this video with them. I would love it if you subscribe to my channel. This way, if there's anything that comes up, new videos, new content, you will be the first to know. And if you're someone who's like, listen, I need help, I need that extra one-on-one, I definitely would love to help you. And you can check out the link in my comments to find out how we can work together. So I hope this has been helpful. And until next time, I hope you rest well.